September 1846, the Victoria Strait, the absolute edge of the mapped world, a place where cartographers simply stopped drawing lines, leaving nothing but an ominous, terrifying blank space upon the parchment. A landscape so utterly hostile, it rejects the very concept of life. This is not just frozen water. This is multi-year pack ice, a chaotic, churning desert of jagged blue-pressure ridges, thrusting 40 feet into the freezing fog, where the temperature plummets to 50 degrees below zero. The silence here is not peaceful. It is the heavy, predatory silence of an apex predator waiting for its prey to exhale its final breath. Trapped in this infinite white void are two magnificent machines of the Victorian age, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. They sit completely motionless, entombed in the crushing grip of the Arctic Ocean. The ice has violently clamped around their massive wooden hulls, lifting them slightly out of the water like helpless wooden toys caught in a vice. Inside their freezing, darkened bellies, 129 men of the British Royal Navy are waiting. They wait for a thaw that will never come. In the pitch-black polar night, they lie in their hammocks, listening to the terrifying, deafening groans of the frozen sea, squeezing the timber of their ships. The wood shrieks like a dying animal under millions of tons of pressure. They did not come here to survive the Arctic. They came to conquer it, to force a path through the mythical Northwest Passage, a fabled trade route that would connect the Atlantic to the Pacific, securing Britain's absolute dominance over the globe. They brought the finest technology of the 19th century. They brought science. They brought the arrogant certainty of an empire upon which the sun never set. But the ice does not care about the British Empire. The ice does not care about Queen Victoria. The ice cannot be negotiated with, and it cannot be intimidated. It only waits. To truly understand the absolute terror of this tragedy, to comprehend how 129 highly trained sailors, pioneering scientists, and decorated war veterans slowly descended into unimaginable madness and vanished into the white abyss, we have to go back to a time of supreme arrogance. May 1845, the River Thames, England. The air is thick with the black smoke of the Industrial Revolution. 129 men leave the docks aboard a fleet that represents the absolute pinnacle of human engineering. Look at these two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. Originally built as heavily reinforced bomb vessels for warfare, they have been entirely retrofitted for this holy grail of exploration. They are not mere wooden ships. They are floating fortresses of Victorian hubris. Their bows are wrapped in massive, heavy iron plates, specifically designed to smash through the Arctic ice with sheer brute force. Deep in their bellies, something entirely new has been installed. Locomotive steam engines, originally built for the London and Greenwich Railway, have been stripped down and fitted inside the ships to drive massive, heavy screw propellers. They are the first exploration vessels in human history to use steam power. But the Royal Navy did not just prepare for survival. They prepared to bring the comforts of civilized London into the frozen wasteland. Below deck, it is a gentleman's palace. The officers' cabins are fitted with polished mahogany writing desks. Heavy velvet curtains drape over the small, thick glass windows. They carry a massive naval library containing exactly 1,200 books, Dickens, Shakespeare, and religious texts. They drink from hand-cut crystal goblets and eat with fine sterling silver cutlery engraved with their family crests. They carry a pet monkey for entertainment, a brass barrel organ to play cheerful parlor music in the dark, a daguerreotype camera to photograph their inevitable triumph, and the food. The expedition carries 3 years' worth of provisions, an astronomical amount of supplies, 136,000 pounds of flour, 3,600 gallons of high-proof rum. But their greatest pride is a revolutionary new technology meant to defeat starvation entirely. 8,000 heavy sealed tin cans of soup, roasted meat, and vegetables. Commanding this monumental effort is Sir John Franklin, a 59-year-old veteran of the ice, a man who survived starvation on a previous Arctic mission by eating his own leather boots. He is a beloved figure, a man who firmly believes that human civilization can overpower the chaotic forces of nature. His second in command is Captain Francis Crozier, commanding HMS Terror, an incredibly experienced, brilliant, but deeply melancholic Irishman. Crozier knows the ice better than any man alive. But as an Irishman of common birth, he was passed over for supreme command. On May 19, 1845, they sail out of England with brass bands playing, massive crowds cheering on the docks, and absolute certainty in their hearts. They are invincible. July 1845, Baffin Bay, the gateway to the labyrinth. Two Scottish whaling ships spot Erebus and Terror moored to a massive, towering iceberg, waiting for the dense summer pack ice to clear so they can enter the maze of the Canadian Arctic archipelago. The sailors wave to the whalers. They are in high spirits, well-fed, confident. The officers invite the whaling captains aboard for a lavish dinner. As the whaling ships turn back towards Europe, the crews watch the dark masts of Erebus and Terror fade into the freezing fog. It is the last time any European will ever see them alive. They enter the Lancaster Sound. The Grand Trap begins to open its jaws. At first, the journey is triumphant. They make excellent time, navigating the deep, dark waters of the northern channels. But then, winter arrives. The brief Arctic summer violently collapses. The pale sun dips below the horizon, plunging the world into months of absolute suffocating darkness. Franklin orders the ships to anchor at a barren, desolate rock called Beechey Island for their first winter. Here, the cold is not just a temperature. It is a physical entity. It bites at exposed skin with the ferocity of a wild dog. It turns a man's breath into heavy ice crystals instantly. To touch cold iron with bare hands is to lose your skin. But inside the ships, the fires burn bright. A complex network of brass pipes carries warm steam from the locomotive engines through the wooden corridors. They read Charles Dickens by candlelight. They put on theatrical plays on the upper deck to keep morale high. They drink hot tea from fine china. They believe they are perfectly safe. But the Arctic demands a toll. Even in the safety of the ships, the shadow of death creeps in. 3 young men fall mysteriously ill. John Torrington, John Hartnell, William Brain. Despite the best efforts of the expedition's brilliant surgeons, their lungs fill with fluid. They cough up blood. Within weeks, all 3 are dead. Their grieving crewmates chisel into the frozen, unforgiving permafrost of Beechey Island. It takes days of agonizing labor to dig just a few feet down. They bury the 3 young men in deep, icy graves, placing wooden boards over their coffins. They do not know it, but the extreme cold stops the natural process of decay entirely. It perfectly preserves their faces, a macabre, frozen sleep that will last for over a century and a half, a terrifying warning of what is to come. Summer 1846. The ice finally thaws just enough to let the massive ships move. Franklin is faced with a choice. To the north lies open water. To the south lies an unmapped channel called the Victoria Strait. Hoping to find the final link of the Northwest Passage, Franklin orders the ships south, pushing deep into the Victoria Strait. It is a fatal, irrecoverable mistake. They sail directly into a geographical meat grinder. Ocean currents funnel massive, multi-year pack ice straight into this narrow channel. The ice here is so thick, so tightly packed, it never truly melts, not even in the peak of summer. In September 1846, the brief summer ends. The ice closes in around them like a monstrous vice. The ocean freezes solid. The ships are violently locked in place. They will never float in open water again. Another winter begins, but this time they are not safely anchored in a harbor. They are suspended in the middle of a frozen, chaotic ocean. The endless polar night breeds a deep, creeping paranoia. And worse, the revolutionary tinned food, the absolute pride of the expedition, is hiding a dark, insidious secret. Stephen Goldner, the man contracted to manufacture the 8,000 tins, secured the government bid at the very last minute. To meet the impossible deadline, his workers sealed the cans in a rush. They sealed them with thick, heavy drops of lead solder. The solder dripped heavily into the soup, into the meat. With every single meal, the proud officers and crew of the Royal Navy are ingesting a potent, invisible neurotoxin. Lead poisoning begins to creep through their veins, slowly dismantling their central nervous systems. The mind rots before the body. Men become violently irritable, deeply paranoid, and struck by agonizing stomach cramps. They hallucinate in the dark corridors. The meticulous military discipline begins to fray at the edges. And then, the ancient enemy of the sailor arrives, scurvy. The lemon juice they brought lost its vitamin C months ago due to poor storage. Scurvy is a disease of horrifying cellular breakdown. The The body literally forgets how to hold itself together. Gums turn pitch black and bleed endlessly. Old healed wounds spontaneously tear open. Teeth fall out into their hands. Their joints swell to the size of grapefruits, making every single step excruciating torture. The magnificent floating palaces are slowly transforming into floating asylums. Dark, freezing tombs filled with coughing, bleeding, and the moans of the dying. June 11th, 1847, the absolute unthinkable happens. Sir John Franklin, the invincible veteran of the ice, dies. The exact cause is unknown. Perhaps a heart attack, perhaps the lead, perhaps the sheer psychological weight of leading his men into a frozen hell. The expedition is left headless in the dark. Captain Francis Crozier, the melancholic Irishman, takes supreme command. He steps onto the ice, looking at the two trapped ships. He knows the terrible truth that the others are too terrified to admit. The ice is not going to melt this year or the next, and absolutely nobody is coming to save them. By April 1848, the ships have been trapped for 19 agonizing months. The situation has collapsed into total despair. 24 men are dead, including 9 officers. The hierarchy of the ship is disintegrating. Crozier makes the most desperate, heartbreaking decision in the history of naval exploration. They must abandon the ships. Before they leave, 2 officers march to the rocky shore of King William Island. They leave a single piece of paper hidden inside a stone cairn. It is a standard Admiralty form, but scribbled around the margins in Crozier's own handwriting is a chilling message. HM, Ship's Terror, and Erebus were deserted on the 22nd of April. 5 leagues NNW of this. Sir John Franklin died on the 11th of June, 1847, and start on tomorrow 26th for Back's Fish River. It is the last official communication of the Franklin expedition. A death warrant written in ink. 105 starving, sick, poisoned men step out of the heavy wooden ships and onto the endless, blinding white ice. Their plan is sheer, unadulterated madness. They will drag heavy oak lifeboats mounted on iron runner sledges across the frozen jagged ocean to King William Island. From there, they intend to walk hundreds of miles south to a remote fur trading outpost in mainland Canada. But their minds are already shattered by the lead and the scurvy. The Victorian facade has entirely collapsed into insanity. Instead of packing only essential survival gear, tents, blankets, and pure calories, the poisoned, delirious men load the heavy wooden sledges with absolute absurdity. They pack heavily engraved silver forks, silk handkerchiefs, shoe polish, brass buttons, heavy mahogany writing desks, and multiple copies of the novel The Vicar of Wakefield. They cannot let go of their civilization. They are dragging the weight of the British Empire with them into the apocalypse. They harness themselves to the sledges like pack animals. 105 dying men pulling sledges that weigh over 200 pounds per man. And the death march begins. They pull hundreds of pounds of useless silver over jagged pressure ridges in minus 40-degree winds. Every step is an agony of bleeding gums and tearing muscles. They begin to drop dead in their tracks, one by one, leaving a macabre trail of corpses frozen instantly in the ice. Some men simply sit down in the snow, close their eyes, and let the freezing numbness wash over them, never to wake up. The local Inuit hunters watch them from a distance. They are horrified. They call them the starving men, men with blackened faces, hollow, sunken eyes, who fall down on the ice and never get up. As the weeks drag into months, the food completely runs out, the sealed tins are empty, the leather boots are chewed and swallowed, and then the ultimate, unspeakable horror unfolds on the ice of King William Island. The gentlemen of the Royal Navy, the highly educated officers of the world's greatest empire, they look at the frozen bodies of their fallen friends. The most ancient taboo is broken. They butcher their own dead. Skulls are cracked open to consume the brain. Long bones, femurs, and tibias are violently fractured, smashed with rocks to extract the raw, bloody marrow inside. It is survival at the ultimate cost of the human soul, a complete descent into primal savagery. Decades later, when the first physical evidence of cannibalism is brought back to London by the explorer John Ray, the Victorian public is completely outraged. Charles Dickens himself writes furious articles, outright rejecting the idea that British gentlemen could ever resort to such barbarism. He blames the Inuit, accusing them of murder. The Empire simply cannot accept that its heroes were reduced to flesh-eating animals. But the bones do not lie. Modern forensics reveals the deep knife cuts. The polishing of the bone ends from being boiled in pots. Despite the cannibalism, despite the desperate march, it is not enough. Not a single man survives. 129 men swallowed by the ancient freezing silence of the Arctic. For over a century and a half, the Erebus and Terror remain lost, ghost ships of the North. Crushed by the ice, they sink into the dark, freezing depths of the ocean, leaving behind only scattered bones bleaching in the sun, a single piece of paper hidden in rocks, and silver forks rusting quietly in the snow. It wasn't until 2014 and 2016 that the wrecks were finally discovered by underwater drones, resting exactly where the Inuit oral history had always said they were, perfectly preserved in the freezing deep. The Arctic remains undefeated. The ice opened its jaws, swallowed the pride of an empire, and snapped shut. Nature, in the end, reclaims everything, watching the past so we can understand the present. And together we keep history resurrected. I'll see you in the next era.